Hello, I'm Philip Sheldrake and welcome to CIPRtv, live at 5 and brought to you by our partners, Marketeers 4DC. The Chartered Institute of Public Relations is a democratically led body. The President of the Institute is a member and is directly elected by their fellow members to a role that makes them both a figurehead and spokesman, not just for the 10,000 members of the CIPR, but for the wider profession on issues such as ethics, standards and the value of reputation to the economy. This year, 3 candidates are fighting the election, showing just how vibrant the CIPR has become. Tonight, we get to meet the contenders and most importantly, you, the viewer, can question them live using the hashtag #CIPRtv or the live question box on the CIPR website. Joining me are the 3 candidates: Rob Brown, Managing Director of Staniforth, Sue Wolstenholme, Managing Director, Ashley Public Relations, and Lionel Zetter, Managing Director at Zetter's Political Services Limited. Each candidate will have a chance to make their pitch for roughly 3 minutes, followed by questions, and I'll do my best to guide what I hope will be a high-level debate on the future of the PR profession. Before we start, a quick reminder: polling opened last month and will close at noon, no later, Friday 18th of November. Full members and fellows are eligible to vote. You should have received your ballot by email for the first time this year, directly from the Electoral Reform Service. If you haven't received it, just check your email, particularly your spam box first. Otherwise, please do call the number on the screen. So, Rob, I wonder if I might invite you to give us your 3-minute pitch.
The CIPR presidential election is going to be different in a lot of ways this year. Firstly, there are 3 candidates. In many years in the past, there's only been 1. Secondly, there's online voting, and that's for the very first time. And the election comes at a point when the very nature of PR and how it should evolve is under debate. Some people have said that I'm the modernising candidate, and I like to think that in some ways I am, but I'm not about to ignore the CIPR's past and its heritage and what practitioners have learnt over the years. In fact, I think it's the heritage of the CIPR and the profession that makes us best suited to adapt to the communication situation that we now find ourselves in. We PR practitioners have always had to deliver our messages via intermediaries and third parties. In the past, that's been largely a small group of stakeholders plus journalists and broadcasters. Now, the audiences and the channels are much more fragmented. But the skills of persuasive communication and understanding where influence lies are as important, if not more important, than ever. I'm a mainstream PR person. I've worked in PR for over 20 years. I'm familiar with the workings of a fax machine. I'm able to stick labels on the backs of photographs, in fact, have done many of those. And I remember a time when phones were used for making phone calls. However, the media is evolving at a heart-stopping rate and PR needs to evolve with it. I've already played a part in how the CIPR is facing the challenge. The social media panel, which I've chaired since its inception 18 months ago, has been involved in a number of initiatives. It's fast-track trainers approved with social media experience. We created new guidelines, introduced the social summer sessions and supported dedicated conferences. In fact, there's one next week on the 14th, which I would urge you to attend. It's a fantastic lineup. Seriously, book now. I also believe that the CIPR needs to be at the heart of re-engineering the skills of our industry and equipping our members appropriately. But this election shouldn't be about a single issue, so I'm going to tell you where I stand on some other key issues. With regard to the much debated CIPR, PRCA merger, I'm not against that in principle. But the recent discussions have benefited neither body and they haven't done anything for the reputation of PR. We should take that discussion off the table for the next 2 or 3 years. We could always come back to it in the future. Is the profession sufficiently diverse? Do we offer the same opportunities to people whatever their backgrounds? I don't think we do. And I think we should support some of the fantastic initiatives that are in their formative stages to help address that issue. We need to do more for the 2/3 of CIPR members based outside of London. I took part in a debate in Edinburgh that was part of the marketing festival in the summer, and there's an extraordinary strong and vibrant PR community in Scotland, as there is in Wales and in the English regions. I believe we need to be more of a part of that. We need to ensure that education in PR is keeping pace with the development of the profession. We should provide more input and build bridges between our universities and thought leaders in the Institute. There is much that threatens the PR profession in 2011, but there are also enormous opportunities. We should seize them.
Rob, thank you very much for laying out your stall. Sue, can I ask you to do the same? 3 minutes, please.
Yes, indeed. This is very exciting, and I'm really pleased to be here to be doing this. Several years ago, I actually tried to form a breakaway faction from the CIPR for professional public relations practitioners, because I felt that the Institute was actually working more for its existence than for its purpose. And actually, I'm thrilled now that that's changed such a lot. We've got a fantastic strategy for the future, which will keep needing tweaking, like all good strategies. We've got good governance, we've got a lot of things in place, but above all, we've started really looking at the profession, which is what we're here to do. We've actually got a big duty as regards the profession, because no one else is looking after it. It is our job as a chartered body, and so we have to give it a lot of attention. Since 1989, a lot of students have been coming out with degrees in public relations. So there are now thousands of people who are qualified and working as professionals, and we need to represent them. They deserve our attention and they need our support. And so with that in mind, I think we should also consider our own qualifications. Since the late 90s, we've actually been running our own qualifications. We've now got an international network of centres, and I love working with that network. We actually improve things all the time, we develop things together, and we're helping to make the practice much better as a result. It's a genuine partnership. In fact, it leads to some fantastic things, and I recently heard that in Croatia, the CIPR qualifications open doors. We want that to be the same here. Very, very loudly, we want that to be the same here, and actually have the profession being led by people who are qualified in the future. The Chartered Practitioner Award is the icing on our cake. It's much needed because we can take our place now on the boards with other chartered colleagues, the accountants and the lawyers and others who have reached the top of their game. We need to be there with them because we've got the reputation to look after, which recent research is showing is now the biggest and most important asset on the balance sheets of companies. And sadly, too many boards don't have qualified people representing that big aspect of their work. And so we should be there with others to do that. And we mustn't forget that public relations is a very powerful tool. And as Adrian Wheeler tells us on the website, that's why we've got to have a very strong link to ethics and understanding of ethics, because with that tool we can do a lot of harm. Years ago, when I was working in the university sector on the Masters in European Public Relations, we put public relations on trial as an evil force in society. And I have to tell you, we were found guilty. So it's our job now to turn that verdict over and make a change and really put ourselves forward for a profession.
Sue, thank you very much. Lionel, could I ask you to do the same, sir?
Thank you very much, Philip. Well, first of all, many people have asked me why I'm standing to be president, especially as, unlike my two colleagues, I have actually done the job before. The answer is very simple. I really enjoyed being president. I thought I did a good job, and I'd like to do the same again. What are my priorities? Well, first of all, membership. The fact is that we have around about 9,500 members. There are at least 30,000 people out there who are not members of the CIPR. Why? Because we haven't approached them, they don't think it's relevant, we haven't used the right tools to engage with them. So that would be my number one priority. I have run in the past and still run a number of membership organisations. I know how to do that job. It's as much about retaining membership as it is about getting new members, and I think I have those skills. Secondly, lobbying. Lobbying is, as many of you know, in the spotlight. It always is, but especially now. In the past, I gave evidence to the Nolan Committee on Standards in Public Life. I gave evidence to the last Public Administration Select Committee inquiry into lobbying, and I'm sure I will be giving evidence to the next inquiry, which is coming up shortly. I'm very proud to be a lobbyist. I think it's part of the democratic process. I think we produce better policy and better legislation. I've written 3 books on the subject. I think I know a lot about it, and I think I can show the kind of leadership we need. As far as I'm concerned, yes, of course we need scrutiny, of course we need legislation, but it's as much about the culture of compliance as it is about legislation. Finances. When I became president in 2007, I turned the finances of the Institute around. We showed a profit for the first time in 3 years. We built up a small reserve, but a reserve nevertheless. I know how to run a balance sheet. I have never, ever, ever in my entire life borrowed a penny other than £25,000 when that was the tax allowable limit on a mortgage. Other than that, everything I built has been through my money, not through borrowed money. I believe in sound finances. The CIPR will not become Greece under my leadership. Finally, PRCA. Yes, I think we need to work with them. No, I don't think we need to merge with them. I think it needs to be a recalibrated relationship. I think it needs to be based on mutual respect. I think I have the contacts and the experience to bring that about. I would like to have the opportunity to recalibrate our relationship with the PRCA. Why do I think personally I have the ability to do this job? Very simple. I run a portfolio career now. I have 3 or 4 jobs, half a dozen clients. I balance them all. I balance my diary. I balance my time commitments. I can prioritize. Being president of the CIPR would be just having one more client. And as with all my clients, I think I do a really good job. So I would urge you to vote, preferably for me, but do vote anyway because this is a really important election. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Lionel. So we've got the show underway. Thank you very much. You've all set out your stalls, as I say. Let's get some questions in. We have a question straight off the bat, which is the elephant in the room, the economy. We all go home and tune into the TV of the evening, and it looks doom and gloom out there. What do you think of the economic and political ramifications for our profession? Who would like to rise to that challenge? Because it's going to feature large in your president-elect and presidential year, no doubt.
I think you have to put it in context. What we're talking about here is an economy that is bumping along the bottom. We grew by 0.5% in the last quarter. Traditionally, we grow by 0.6% in every quarter. It is not all doom and gloom. However, these are challenging times and we need to look to our resources and husband our resources. But I don't think we will be doing anyone any favours by painting an excessively gloomy picture of the economy or the state of PR.
Do you think that there's a value missing for public relations, which means in hard times we might get the chop first? Redundancies are definitely being discussed widely.
I think the issue for public relations is really public relations needs to adapt to survive, probably, but certainly to thrive. We need to address the way society is changing in a very broad way. So it's not just about the economy. It's a bit like being a small player in a big in a big economic pool. The kind of marketing communications spend is far bigger than the PR spend at the moment. So the macroeconomic effects needn't have a major detrimental effect on the PR industry if the PR industry responds correctly. I think the macroeconomic situation that we're in is quite serious, and I think that will continue for many years. I think we should adapt ourselves to a situation where the norm is not 6% growth. The norm is probably close to zero growth, and I think we all need to adapt to that. But I think in terms of the way the PR profession develops, there are lots of things we can do to adapt and grow our share, if you like.
Well, so we did make Hey Why the Sun Shines. We introduced chartered status a few years back now. In fact, a very popular question on the web form and via Twitter. So thanks to Sean Trainer, Pat Gowdin and John Clements for a question on this subject. What do you think is the single most important thing that you will bring to the Institute to leverage this chartered status?
Well, actually, I think this links to the last question very beautifully, because
just as well.
Just as well.
They were tying this programme together.
Yeah, let's do that. No, certainly. I remember talking to the advisory group of employers on the qualifications department, the professional development committee, and they were very clear. The bigger employers said they want the best people. And so they would rather perhaps have, maybe if they've got to have fewer, they want to have better so that they can do the job more clearly and more professionally. And that's a really big opportunity for us because that's who we represent, the better people, the qualified people, the stronger, the people who know what they're doing. And the chartered practitioner is the ideal lead for that. It's our exemplar, it's our role model, and we should use them much, much more to get out there and tell people what being a professional public relations person means. means, because I don't think it's well enough understood.
And Lionel, do you have a vision for chartered status?
Well, I totally agree with Sue. I mean, we have our fellows who are the elders of the tribe, if you like, and they have a lot of accumulated wisdom, but chartered status is what sets us above other trade bodies in the area. Being a chartered body puts us up there with the CIOM and other chartered bodies. It is, as Sue said, our exemplar, and I agree with Sue.
So, keeping with your good self, wanted to ask you about lobbying, because that features strong in your pitch just now. A question in from LW Anderson. What are your views on how the CIPR should handle the lobbying register? The self-regulated thing that now might not be self-regulated, don't know where it's going.
Indeed. I think it's one of the few areas where the CIPR, PRCA and the APPC have shown leadership together. We came together to set up the UK Public Affairs Council, which brought together a set of generic principles and a nascent register of lobbyists. So whichever route the government decides to go, whether it is self-regulation or statutory regulation, we have begun to address the issue. There is a nascent body there, should they choose to run with it. But to be honest, if they go with statutory regulation, myself and most of my colleagues in the field have no fears with that whatsoever.
Because UCPAC has struggled a little. Is it fair to say?
Struggled on the IT side, as so many organisations do, including government, and I think that's why the Cabinet Office have been quite understanding, because the government have had their own issues with databases and with IT. But they do appreciate our efforts, and we are working very closely with them, along with the PRCA and the APPC. So there are areas where we can work together.
Well, while we're on the topic of specialist subjects, I wondered if, Sue, I might ask you, training and education. There's a masses of change. Lifelong learning is now well established across all chartered professions. What's going to rock and roll if you're president for 2013?
Well, I'm going to look at the whole range of things that help us to become professional, and obviously being qualified is one of them. And so I'm going to give a lot of focus on that, and on the ethics side, which is the other branch of what a professional stands for. We need to get the message out there and celebrate the people we've already got much more. We've got a tremendous range of people working at the top of their game who leave the CIPR, or have done in the past, once they get qualified. We want them back. We want to represent them properly, and show ourselves as the kind of body that understands what their working lives about and what their needs are. So lots of training, lots of more education. We've got a tremendous, as I said before, network of centres, and an awful lot to learn. I remember actually you mentioned about social media. When I went to the first Euroblog conference, which was run by Philip Young and Ansgar Zerfas about 8 years ago, I think, I thought I wish I could retire now, because I'll never get my head around this lot. But thankfully, thanks to the CIPR in great measure, and to Rob as well actually, I've learnt loads, and I do love learning, and it's been great to pass that on to other people through the courses and get everyone fired up about all the possibilities.
Well, that is a perfect segue. It's almost you've set that up for my specialist question to Rob. You are renowned for social media. You wrote a book on it. So how do you see social media playing out? Is there a role for any practitioner going forward who doesn't get social media?
Ultimately, no. I kind of hope by the end of 2013 we stop talking about social media. In fact, I hope the CIPR doesn't have a social media advisory panel anymore, despite the extraordinary good work that you and others who are on it have done. You know, I think the adoption of what we term social media or social networks now as channels becomes very much mainstream, and we stop thinking about the difference between online and offline, conventional and new. It's that no single form of media or mass media communications has ever replaced any other, apart from, I think it was the Telegraph, and so these things they start sitting alongside. You know, Facebook isn't going to replace television. You know, Twitter isn't going to replace newspapers. They just form a new normal. So I hope
Delgit Burgess tweeted in How will you push the CIPR to meet the digital and social media realities of the PR profession today? Does it need more oomph?
I think what I'd like to do is enable people to do it. I think one of the things that I've done, as you've done, a lot of conferences and sessions over the last 2 or 3 years, and I think we need to move towards providing people with craft skills. Actually, I think one thing CIPR can do is actually educate people at a level where we're actually getting them involved and teaching people how to set up WordPress blogs and how to use Tumblr and the nuances of LinkedIn and all those sorts of things. I think that would be enormously helpful. I think I hope we've already passed the point at which people understand that this is an important component of what they do of how people communicate. Yep. So the theory, there's still a place for it, but more practical help for members.
So let's draw a line under social there. I think we've answered that one.
Well, not finish it forever, but
but in the time we have today, So
yeah.
Thanks next to Pamela Mounter for a great question here about the CIPR support for sector and regional groups. Lionel.
Well, I used to be chairman of the CIPR Government Affairs Group, now CIPR Public Affairs, so I regard them as being absolutely vital, whether they are the specialist groups such as public affairs or internal communications, or indeed the nations and regions. And during my presidency, I tried to visit every single nation and region. I did the 3 nations and I think about 6 of the 11 regions. This time round, if elected, I promise I will reach them all, because for most people, their only connection, their only interface with the CIPR is through their regions. So they are absolutely vital.
Sue, would you concur? Or
I definitely agree that they're vital.
It's difficult to disagree with that statement.
It's very difficult to disagree, but I think that as well as visiting them, and I'm sure they'd love to see us all if we became president, but I think they'd rather have more of what we've got. I'm from Cornwall, I haven't got it in London. More of what's going on in London out there. Some fantastic things like the social summers, which were brilliant. Some of them have been elsewhere, but not far enough. So we need to get out there and get the groups doing a lot more, active, far more energetic, and actually providing for their people what people in London get, and rather take for granted a little bit too much, I think. So we've got to serve them. We've got to serve them much more thoroughly.
And the reputation of the PR industry sometimes gets a little bit of a knock, a bit of a cobbler's shoes problem there, I think. For instance, Rob, whenever I see public relations mentioned on the TV, guess who's rolled up? Max Clifford, who is a publicist, first and foremost, not a public relations professional. What's going on there? What's the problem?
I've done my best to denounce Max Clifford. Actually, I did it in my book. I've done it on blogs. I keep wishing he'd sue me because I've revealed things that he told me privately in a lunch that I'm sure he wouldn't like to become particularly well known. Unfortunately, my book sold a reasonable number of copies, but not sufficient to warrant that kind of response. I think it's interesting. I think whoever is the president has an important job to do. I think Jane Wilson, CEO, also has an important job to do. I think we're in a funny period because Paul Milroy, who is an excellent CIPR president, also works for the BBC, so it's quite difficult for him to put himself forward as a voice, if you like, because he's working with people behind the camera. So, and I think it is difficult. I mean, I've always been of the view that PR people should stay behind the camera advising, but I think in the case of future presidents and the CEO, I think there is a really important role for them to represent the professional PR person. And actually, I would, if I was elected, one of the things that I would do is I would ensure that within the staff, every time Max Clifford or his equivalent was trotted out, we had somebody phoning from the CIPR offering an alternative, and in fact not just offering an alternative, but insisting to the Today programme or 5 Live or whoever it was, that they actually, when they talk about public relations, they actually have public relations people speaking on behalf of the profession.
Do you find this, Lionel, when you're interacting in your political groups, that we are associated or synonymous with spin? Which, of course,
certainly on the public affairs side, I mean,
not the definition of public relations.
With the definition of lobbyists were the original spin doctors. So, and let's be honest, there is an element of that. There is no truth. We take a truth and put the best possible spin on it. I don't think we should be too scared of that. But one thing I would do, if I became president, I would actually debate Max Clifford. I think a policy has been made all the way along the line that the CIPR president will not go head-to-head with Max Clifford. I would go head to head. So Max, if you're watching and I win, bring it on.
Oh, me too. I'd love to do that. I can remember when I was teaching university hundreds of years ago that it depressed me that a lot of students wanted to be Max Clifford because they thought he was the kind of zenith. We've now got chartered practitioners, of whom I'm proud to be one, who want to get out there and say, no, Max, not you, it's us. We're professional public relations people and these are the reasons why. And actually he would agree with us.
And the relationship between a PR practitioner and what the Americans might call the C-level, we'd call the board, it's always sometimes struggled. We don't get a place around the table. There's not that degree of accountability that we as a profession might wish to demand. How can you see that changing, Sue?
Well, we've got to prove ourselves. I think the Charter really helps us actually with that because it shows that we're qualified and we know what we're talking
Lionel's
about.
shaking his head. There's a bit of disagreement coming in here.
I don't think we have to prove anything. I think we're already there. I think we already have a seat at the top table. I don't think we need to prove anything.
Yeah,
well,
right.
not enough boards recognise it, so they need to see it. Actually, it's interesting, years ago, about 18 years ago, we made a film with the PRCA in a collaboration called Actions Speak Louder Than Words. And it needs updating because it was aimed at boards to show them what public relations is all about. They may not want to sit around and watch a film, but the idea behind it was excellent. And we captured our unique selling points, really, and put them out there, and it made a difference. And I used it a lot where I went around, but I do think we need to shout much louder. I think we lose far too many opportunities. As Rob was saying, if anything goes out that's about public relations, we should be jumping up and down and saying, we've got something to say.
Fair enough. Rob, I mean, just in terms of the CIPR's relationship with CIM, the Chartered Institute of Marketing, do you have any vision for how we might get the best from each other? I do know that often marketing professionals think PR is a subsidiary discipline as opposed to one that sits alongside. Where would you start?
Those debates have gone forever. I mean, my kind of favourite one now is, in fact, I went to an SEO conference last year and told a bunch of
search
engine optimisation that search engine optimisation was becoming a subset of PR, which went down, as you would imagine, like a lead balloon, but quite deliberately so. I think there is an element of PR that is part of marketing, and there are lots of things that are PR that are nothing to do with marketing. So I think it's the debate will go on. I think it's really important with all professional bodies that we have a good working relationship, and I don't see the CIPR becoming part of the Chartered Institute of Marketing at any time, much as I see it becoming a subset of any other marketing related organisation. I do think there are huge opportunities for collaboration. One thing I would like to take issue with actually on the previous question is in terms of two things. One is I do think the age of spin is over. Actually, I really do. I think, and I went to a conference called Think Conference at the British Library earlier this year, where the CEOs of both Edelman and Weber Shandwick were saying making much that point and saying that actually the job, and this is again back to the kind of board level engagement, the job of the high level strategic PR advisor is to tell organisations how they are perceived and how they should behave. It's no longer about spinning how they behave. It's about advising in terms of the way that they relate and what impact things that they do will have on how they're perceived.
Again, because we're running near the end of the programme right now, but I can't believe the segues that have come up here. This is perfect, because I'm going to finish with a question to each of you from Stuart Bruce that is quite simply, can you define public relations in 20 seconds or less? But equally at that point, if you could just leave, maybe talking to camera again another 10 seconds, define public relations, and then just explain to the viewers why you again. Short, sharp and sweet, and then I can wrap this show up. Lionel, maybe I could ask you to go first.
Of course, Philip. Public relations is primarily about reputation. It's about how we are perceived, how our clients are perceived, how the companies and organisations we represent are perceived. Reputation can be banked. It's as important as any other factor on share price and relationship with our customers. What do I bring? Leadership. One word, leadership. Hopefully leadership by example, but that's what I have to offer.
Thank you very much. And Sue?
Well, obviously, public relations is about reputation, but I can't repeat everything that Lionel just said. In order to have a good reputation, you need good relationships. So that's also a big factor of our work, is building those relationships that the company, the organisation, the public sector, where I've spent a lot of my working life working, needs. And so we build the relationships and we make them matter, and that builds our reputation. And I think that we need a lot of skill to do that and a lot of understanding. And so my offer is very much to put the profession first and watch the members come in, because they'll all want to be with us when we stand flying that banner.
And Rob?
Reputation is as good a definition as any. The relationship between organisations and their publics, as the CIPR defines it. I'm not going to attempt to go beyond that. In terms of what I can bring, hopefully a different perspective. A great quote from a Canadian hockey player called Wayne Gretzky, which I believe was a favourite of Steve Jobs, which I think the CIPR should be doing, which is skating to where the puck's going, not to where it's been.
On that note, I'd like to thank Lionel, Sue and Rob for taking part in this debate and allowing the members to get to know you a little bit better. Polling will close on exactly noon, Friday the 18th of November. Again, if you haven't received your ballot, then just check your email. Again, if you haven't received it, please call the number on the screen, 020 7631 6900. Next month's show will be on engaging audiences through non-traditional PR methods, particularly broadcast, and we'll be looking ahead to 2012. We've had a cracking show today. In the time available, I'd love to have talked about diversity, measurement, membership growth, but time is up against us. So thanks again to Marketeers 4DC, and I hope you can join us then. Thanks very much for watching.